Hello, Professor Franklin. This is my presentation on Charles Darwin and his historical insights and modern psychological practice. Today, I'd like to talk about the important contributions of Charles Darwin, not only as a key figure in the history of psychology, but also as someone whose ideas have had a really significant impact on the way that we approach mental health, especially from an evolutionary perspective. I'll be focusing on how Darwin's theories connect to my own work as a mental health therapist, particularly in the forensic field. I'll also be exploring how his ideas help us understand both the adaptive and maladaptive behaviors that we often see within this context. So, for my introduction slide, Charles Darwin is most known for his theory of evolution by natural selection, which not only changed and revolutionized biology, but also had a profound impact on psychology as a scientific discipline. Beyond that, his work also laid the foundation for modern psychology. Today, I will be exploring Darwin's historical, cultural, and ethical contributions and how they tie into my clinical work in forensic settings. Darwin's ideas give us a framework for understanding behaviors as adaptations driven by survival, which is super important when working with forensic populations. By looking at human behavior through this evolutionary lens, we can better understand how trauma and stress can trigger survival mechanisms like aggression or social withdrawal, behaviors that we often see in these populations. I have a quote here that reads Darwin envisioned a scientific revolution for psychology. His theories of natural and sexual selection identified two classes of struggles. The emergence of evolutionary psychology and related disciplines signals the fulfillment of Darwin's vision. I think that this quote highlights Darwin's influence on psychology, making it a scientific discipline by linking natural and sexual selection to human behavior. For my next slide, on theorist background, Darwin's early life played a really big role in shaping his intellectual journey. He was born in 1809 into a wealthy and intellectually curious family where he was surrounded by people that sparked his love for science. His father, Robert Darwin, was a doctor, and his grandfather was not only a physician, but also a philosopher and a naturalist, which gave Darwin a really strong foundation in or for intellectual curiosity. However, despite these early influences, Darwin did not always thrive in traditional education. His time studying medicine at the University of Edinburgh was both boring and traumatizing to him, which further prompted him to leave medicine and shift his focus to theology and natural history at the University of Cambridge. On top of that, personal challenges like his ongoing health issues and the early loss of his mother at the age of 8 also affected him, possibly shaping his sensitivity to human suffering and his introspective studies, both of which have or would later influence his work. For Darwin's major theory, his theory of natural selection introduced key concepts like adaptation, variation, and survival of the fittest, which have become central to understanding human behavior. His publications and work on the origin of species had major implications for how we view the evolutionary roots of human behavior. In the expression of the emotions in man and animals, Darwin went even further, exploring how emotions themselves might serve adaptive functions. These ideas helped lay the foundation for comparative and evolutionary psychology, focusing on the continuity of behaviors across different species. This approach is especially helpful in forensic mental health, where we can view maladaptive behaviors like aggression or trauma responses as potential survival strategies. Darwin's work also contributes to our understanding of attachment theories and trauma responses, showing how early relationships and environmental stressors play a key role in shaping behavior. I have a picture slide here. I thought that it just related to the presentation and had some cool bits and pieces of information as well as the pictures. For my quote at the bottom, it reads The environment of evolutionary adaptedness refers to the notion that our psychological mechanisms have evolved in response to stable features of ancestral environments. I think that this aligns with explaining behaviors as survival driven adaptations, which is relevant to forensic work. For cultural perspectives and systemic biases, despite Darwin's important and revolutionary work, he did face significant cultural resistance, especially from religious groups who saw his theories as a direct challenge to creationism. However, his ideas eventually gained acceptance within the scientific community, which fit into the scientific worldview of that time. With that said, the Western application of Darwin's theories often overlooked indigenous and non Western perspectives on human development and diversity. Additionally, his ideas were later misused in the context of social Darwinism and eugenics, which contributed to systemic discrimination and raised ethical concerns. These misapplications serve as a reminder of the need to integrate Darwin's principles with a more holistic understanding of cultural and environmental factors. The picture that I included on this slide states it is not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. And my quote at the bottom reads Darwin's ideas were enthusiastically and usually incorrectly employed as justification for the whole political spectrum, from the far right to the far left, which I thought went well with this slide. And then I just have a slide here, a picture related to social Darwinism that I thought I would include. For relevant ethical considerations, so historically, Darwin's ideas were misused to justify social inequalities and hierarchies as seen in movements like social Darwinism and eugenics. These misapplications led to the dehumanization of marginalized groups and raised big ethical concerns. Today, it is super important that we use evolutionary psychology principles in a way that is both equitable and culturally sensitive. This means acknowledging the systemic factors that influence behavior and applying Darwin's insights in ways that support trauma informed care, especially for groups like the forensic population, where cultural sensitivity is super important because the clients can definitely pick up on when we're being authentic and taking into account, just their cultural backgrounds and all of that. Ethical practice requires a careful balance between biological explanations and the socio-environmental context in which people live. So, just really important in terms of our ethical considerations. For my personal reflection, Darwin's focus on adaptation, I think, really connects with my work in forensic mental health. Behaviors like aggression or impulsivity can often be seen as survival responses to environmental stressors. By understanding these behaviors through the lens of evolution, especially the fight, flight, and freeze responses, we can take a more trauma informed approach to care. I think that interventions that target these evolutionary triggers, like aggression or social withdrawal, can be more effective in supporting rehabilitation overall. So, Darwin's insights into resilience and adaptability also guide us in developing strategies that promote recovery and growth within the forensic population rather than just focusing on punitive measures. And next is my conclusion slide. So, overall, Charles Darwin's contributions have had a super significant impact on how we understand psychology as well as behavior. His evolutionary framework provides us with valuable insights into both adaptive and maladaptive behaviors, especially in forensic settings. By thoughtfully and ethically integrating his principles, I think that we can improve mental health care and rehabilitation efforts overall. As clinicians, it's super important to stay aware of the power and responsibility that comes with applying these transformative ideas to diverse and complex populations. I have a quote here that reads, "One of Darwin's major achievements was expanding nomological nets across many disciplines. Because of this achievement, for the first time in history, geology and paleontology organic evolution, ecology, animal behavior, and even human behavior, mind, and conscious became linked by faintly discernible laws of causal relationships. So overall, Darwin's interdisciplinary impact aligns with my own practice. I think that practical applications like using an evolutionary lens to understand maladaptive behaviors and designing interventions that promote resilience and adaptability is super important. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I will conclude with my reference slide, which contains the list of peer-reviewed journals and articles used to help obtain information and valuable insights for my presentation. Thank you. Bye.